The 8 Stages of Human Development. The theory of psychological development created by Erik Erikson, a German-American developmental psychologist and psychoanalyst, is one of the best-known personality theories. The theory differs from many others in that it addresses development across the entire lifespan, from birth through death. At each stage, the individual deals with a conflict that serves as a turning point in development. When the conflict is resolved successfully, the person is able to develop the psychological quality associated with that particular stage of development. However, if they fail to deal effectively with these conflicts, they may not develop the essential skills needed for a strong sense of self. Erikson also believed that a sense of competence motivates behaviors and actions. Each stage in Erikson's theory is concerned with becoming competent in an area of life. If the stage is handled well, the person will feel a sense of mastery, which is sometimes referred to as ego strength or ego quality. If the stage is managed poorly, the person will emerge with a sense of inadequacy in that aspect of development. Let's see now what these 8 development stages are. Stage 1. Trust versus mistrust. Trust versus mistrust is the earliest psychological stage that occurs during the first year or so of a child's life. During this critical phase of development, an infant is utterly dependent on his or her caregivers. When parents or caregivers respond to a child's needs in a consistent and caring manner, the child then learns to trust the world and the people around him. If a caregiver fails to provide adequate care and love, the child will come to feel that they cannot trust or depend on the adults in their life. If a child successfully develops trust, the child will feel safe and secure in the world. Caregivers who are inconsistent, emotionally unavailable, or rejecting contribute to feelings of mistrust in the children under their care. Failure to develop trust will result in fear and a belief that the world is inconsistent and unpredictable. No child is going to develop a sense of 100% trust or 100% doubt. Erikson believed that successful development was all about striking a balance between the two opposing sides. When this happens, children acquire hope, which Erikson described as an openness to experience tempered by some wariness that danger may be present. Subsequent work by researchers including John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth demonstrated the importance of trust in forming healthy attachments during childhood and adulthood. Stage 2. Autonomy versus shame and doubt. The second psychological stage involves the conflict between autonomy and shame or doubt. As the child enters the toddler years, gaining a greater sense of personal control becomes increasingly important. At this point in development, children are just starting to gain a little independence. They're starting to perform basic actions on their own and making simple decisions about what they prefer. By allowing kids to make choices and gain control, parents and caregivers can help children develop a sense of autonomy. Tasks such as learning how to use the toilet, selecting foods, and choosing toys are ways that children gain a greater sense of independence. The essential theme of this stage is that children need to develop a sense of personal control over physical skills and a sense of independence. Potty training plays an important role in helping children develop this sense of autonomy. Children who struggle and who are shamed for their actions may be left without a sense of personal control. Success during this stage of psychological development leads to feelings of autonomy. Failure results in feelings of shame and doubt. Erikson believed that achieving a balance between autonomy and shame and doubt would lead to will, which is the belief that children can act with intention, within reason and limits. Stage 3. Initiative versus guilt. The third psychological stage is known as initiative versus guilt and occurs between the ages of about 3 and 5. This stage is centered on developing a sense of self-initiative. Children who are allowed and encouraged to engage in self-directed play emerge with a strong sense of initiative, while children who are discouraged may begin to feel a sense of guilt over their self-initiated activities. The major theme of the third stage of psychological development is that children need to begin asserting control and power over the environment. Success in this stage leads to a sense of purpose. Children who try to exert too much power experience disapproval, resulting in a sense of guilt. When an ideal balance of individual initiative and a willingness to work with others is achieved, the ego quality known as purpose emerges. Stage 4. Industry versus inferiority. During middle childhood between the ages of about 6 and 11, children enter the psychological stage known as industry versus inferiority. As children engage in social interaction with friends and academic activities at school, they begin to develop a sense of pride and accomplishment in their work and abilities. Children who are praised and encouraged develop a sense of competence. Those who are discouraged are left with a sense of inferiority. Successfully finding a balance at this stage of psychological development leads to the strength known as competence, in which children develop a belief in their abilities to handle the tasks set before them. Stage 5. Identity versus confusion. The fifth psychological stage is centered on identity versus role confusion. At this point in development, the formation of a personal identity becomes critical. During adolescence, teens explore different behaviors, roles, and identities. Erikson believed that this stage was particularly crucial and that forging a strong identity serves as a basis for finding future direction in life. Those who find a sense of identity feel secure, independent, and ready to face the future, while those who remain confused may feel lost, insecure, and unsure of their place in the world. But what is identity? When psychologists talk about identity, they're referring to all of the beliefs, ideals, and values that help shape and guide a person's behavior. Completing this stage successfully leads to fidelity, which Erikson described as an ability to live by society's standards and expectations. While Erikson believed that each stage of psychosocial development was important, he placed a particular emphasis on the development of ego identity. Ego identity is the conscious sense of self that we develop through social interaction and becomes a central focus during the identity versus confusion stage of psychosocial development. According to Erikson, our ego identity constantly changes due to new experiences and information we acquire in our daily interactions with others. As we have new experiences, we also take on challenges that can help or hinder the development of identity. Why is identity important? Our personal identity gives each of us an integrated and cohesive sense of self that endures through our lives. Our sense of personal identity is shaped by our experiences and interactions with others, and it's this identity that helps guide our actions, beliefs, and behaviors as we age. Stage 6. Intimacy versus isolation. The sixth psychosocial stage is centered on intimacy versus isolation and is focused on forming intimate, loving relationships with other people. Dating, marriage, family, and friendships are important during the intimacy versus isolation stage, which lasts from approximately age 19 to 40. By successfully forming loving relationships with other people, individuals are able to experience love and enjoy intimacy. Those who fail to form lasting relationships may feel isolated and alone. Remember that each step builds on skills learned in previous steps. Erikson believed that a strong sense of personal identity was important for developing intimate relationships. Studies have demonstrated that those with a poor sense of self tend to have less committed relationships and are more likely to struggle with emotional isolation, loneliness, and depression. Successful resolution of this stage results in the virtue known as love. It is marked by the ability to form lasting, meaningful relationships with other people. Stage 7. Generativity versus stagnation. Once adults enter the generativity versus stagnation stage that occurs during middle adulthood, the psychosocial conflict becomes centered on the need to create or nurture things that will outlast the individual. Raising a family, working, and contributing to the community are all ways that people develop a sense of purpose. Those who fail to find ways to contribute may feel disconnected and useless. Stage 8. Integrity versus despair. The final psychosocial stage is known as integrity versus despair, and it begins around the age of 65 and lasts until death. During this period of time, the individual looks back on his or her life. The major question during this stage is, did I live a meaningful life? Those who have will feel a sense of peace, wisdom, and fulfillment even when facing death. For those who look back on life with bitterness and regret, feelings of despair may result. Those who are unsuccessful during this stage will feel that their life has been wasted and may experience many regrets. The person will be left with feelings of bitterness and despair. Criticisms of psychosocial theory. Erikson's theory also has its limitations and attracts valid criticisms. What kinds of experiences are necessary to successfully complete each stage? How does a person move from one stage to the next? One major weakness of psychosocial theory is that the exact mechanisms for resolving conflicts and moving from one stage to the next are not well described or developed. The theory fails to detail exactly what type of experiences are necessary at each stage in order to successfully resolve the conflicts and move on to the next stage. One of the strengths of psychosocial theory is that it provides a broad framework from which to view development throughout the entire lifespan. It also allows us to emphasize the social nature of human beings and the important influence that social relationships have on development. Researchers have found evidence supporting Erikson's ideas about identity and have further identified different substages of identity formation. Some research also suggests that people who form strong personal identities during adolescence are better capable of forming intimate relationships during early adulthood. Other research suggests, however, that identity formation and development continues well into adulthood.